Well, welcome to our presentation, Signet Jewelers Path to Brilliance presentation. It's our story, and Ian and I are going to tell it to you. And I wanted to ask everyone if, I'm a geographer, and has anyone worn out yet from the day, like walking from location to location? So location matters, right? I mean, it's kind of like a tough walk sometimes to get from one location to the next. I know I missed one of my sessions because it was so far apart from one of the other ones, and oh well, it's a great conference though. My name is Gary Gruccio, and I am the Director of Enterprise and Market Analytics at Signet Jewelers. I've been there for about 20 years. I've been using Alteryx for about 11 years. So you might say like I'm an Alteryx OG, but I know that in some cases, some of you might be thinking like OG must stand for old guy, right? I've used Tableau for about 4 years. I'm enthusiastic about both of the products. I'm a geographer, like I said before, and we're here pretty much to tell our story.
Yep, so I'm Ian Reed, Manager of Enterprise Analytics. Been with Sterling or Signet now for 5 years. But what I want to tell you guys, so we're going to be talking about our organizational change, but I also want you guys to think about this in terms of your career. So in that 5 years, I've had 4 roles there, and it's primarily because of the things that we're doing in developing this COE at our organization. So at the same time you're thinking about an organizational structure and change, also think about it in terms of your own development.
So as we mentioned, we're basically here to tell our story. We're talking about the transformation plan that we're on. We're in about year 2 of a year 3 transformation plan, overcoming some of the challenges that we've had, and some of our big wins, and finally some key takeaways, because we want the audience to also potentially feel like they can do this within their own organization as well. So what do I mean by Path to Brilliance? Well, Path to Brilliance has 3 strategic planks to it: customer first, omni-channel, and a culture of agility and efficiency. And anyone that's been using Tableau or Alteryx maybe for some period of time, you might see that some of the sub-bullets of this actually fit well where Alteryx and Tableau have their strengths. Things like doing deeper customer analytics, or unleashing an entrepreneurial spirit, or allowing the talent of our team to truly rise to the top. Those kind of things actually fit very well in a Tableau and Alteryx environment. And really our story is that we grew out of the real estate department. So it's kind of odd to think about because this is so much BI and analytical tools, and yet we had incorporated the use of Alteryx and Tableau to manage our data, to display our data, and we were doing it so well that the rest of the organization saw what we were doing, and they said basically, can you make this happen for the rest of the Signet organization? So we are actually kind of like, it's a strange thing, but we are within the real estate team. Lynn Dennison is the Chief Transformation Officer, Dave Klunk, our SVP of Real Estate, Brian Strickland then is our boss now in this newly created Enterprise Analytics Department, and then we fall under that, and we basically now have the job of socializing the use of Alteryx and Tableau throughout the rest of the organization.
And what's cool about that, from my perspective, in sitting in your guys' shoes, is, I mean, we grew this out of a ground up perspective. It wasn't anything that the executive pushed down us. It was something that we originated in real estate, which I don't know any other stories of people originating a deployment like we have in real estate, let alone another business unit like that. So no matter where you guys sit in your organization, don't think that you can't grow to the scope that we are right now as well.
So why us? As I mentioned, this is something I've been involved with for a long time. 2009 was I made my first use case, and I went to the senior executive that was in charge of my department and said, we have to buy this thing called Alteryx. It's going to like change the way that we do things. You can see that anyone that's used Alteryx might know that the tools look a little bit different now than they did back then, but I actually dug up this workflow that I did in February of 2009 and was able to take a process that we were taking and spending $10,000 annually with an outside vendor and just automate it using these few tools here. And I said, geez, the opportunities must be huge beyond this. I also could see that there were things I was doing that was mathematical calculations behind the scenes that actually would have lent value to other departments, but they just couldn't quite see it yet. So this 2009 story, it's like one of these overnight successes that took 10 or 12 years to actually materialize. I also am an Alteryx ace. I happen to think my picture is a little unflattering, but the ACE logo is pretty awesome. Anyway, and that means that I'm really enthusiastic and passionate about Alteryx and really love using it and talking about it to others. So whether it's online or just with groups in general, We've been asked to do a lot of different presentations, and eventually when you're very passionate about Alteryx, they recognize you with this ACE designation. The Tableau story is a little bit later. 2015 was when we began making a case for Tableau. And this was my first dashboard that I used to then convince my senior executive at that time we need to buy Tableau. That actually took like 25 seconds. This is, we talk about the power of visual communication. I built this dashboard, sat down with our senior executive at the time of real estate, and he says, I get it, you guys can buy it. And basically kind of like revolutionized the way that we do things. But at the time, he came back later and told us, I just thought you guys wanted some new toy. I didn't realize it was going to actually do something for us, and it really did. And it was just kind of like a way that I was like looking at leasing managers, territories over the country, and all these kind of things. It made sense to him, so we bought it.
And at the same time, this is when I came on board. So Gary introduced me to Alteryx and Tableau at this time. So when I joined, I didn't have these grandiose plans of it turning into what it is. I'm sure Gary did, knowing Gary the way I do. But really, I mean, it's just the passion and enthusiasm we had for this. These tools are fun. And if you carry that throughout the rest of your organization, I mean, it's contagious. So anything that's organic like it is developing for us, I think it carries its weight in gold.
So I mentioned that we were able then to begin to start to fill this more of an enterprise role. And what you have here is sort of this depicted picture of the fight between IT and the departments within a company. Right? IT wants to build like a single source of the truth, have a lot of controls put into place, have maybe one version of the truth, those kind of things. The departments, they just oftentimes want freedom. They want to be able to pick what tools that they use. And so you have this conflict really that develops within an organization where, if you've heard the term shadow IT, little shadow IT departments will break out in these other departments where people will procure their own sources of data. They'll begin to like stand up their own MicroStrategy environments, their SaaS environments, Microsoft Access, tons of databases, those kinds of things. But really IT is like, okay, you guys want to buy all this stuff, hands off, we're not going to help you. If you have a problem, you have to deal directly with the vendor. And at the same time, IT is really trying to build something that would fit everyone's needs. And so the thought is, could we potentially do something different, a different way, is to how do you make collaboration between IT and the departments happen? And what they've done then is layered us in between IT and the departmental level teams. So we are to fill this middle role between the centralized and decentralized approach. We are to socialize these tools. We are to be sort of the first line of defense in terms of like the help desk kind of thing. If somebody has a problem to get their workflow working, they don't call IT, they call us. And as part of that, to bring some formality to that, we've instituted a data governance committee where business units can submit people to be these data stewards and assist with the process. So if you're an expert in merchandising, you come and you become a data steward and you assist IT in what are the definitions for your department for IT to sort of like build this like central warehouse with the data governance committee like over top of it, voting on priorities and things like that. And then this ACE community is how we're socializing it within our organization, going out and telling people, hey, I know that you have this data silo. Wouldn't you like to be part of this larger community that we're building? You'll get data that you never had before. We'll be able to leverage the data that you have, and at the same time, we're going to give you tools that are going to be powerful within your departments and make an impact. Right, so no longer do you have to worry about somebody has SaaS, somebody has MicroStrategy, somebody has Excel only or Access and those kind of things, but we're actually giving the tools away basically to the teams in return for their participation in this, the way this works. I mentioned, and this is in more detail, our data governance committee. We do have our IT department then aligned with building a centralized data warehouse and having these data stewards from these various departments, and we do meet monthly to discuss and vote on priorities. So there's a form that basically somebody wants to bring demographics into it, and we don't have demographics today. Well, we work on that and we see, well, where does demographics fit in terms of its priority against customer data or store data or that kind of thing. So it's basically a way to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that IT has the resources allocated to do the work that's necessary to keep things moving. And then the analytic community of excellence is really more the cultural side or how we're socializing it to the rest of the team. We have an Alteryx data champion, that would be myself. We have a Tableau data champion, which would be Ian Reed right here. And then we do have 5, we call them ACE ambassadors, again, Analytic Community of Excellence, within our various departments at Signet that are sort of like ambassadors to that team. So operations, why would you potentially get involved with this? Well, we've got somebody in operations that's on this committee, and they go and they begin to like socialize it within their department. Maybe they create something awesome, and then they're able to show like 5 other people that awesome thing they created using these tools. And so it's kind of like let it be a little bit viral and decentralized on the departmental side.
Before you go on, if you'll go back real quick. So what's in the picture right here, it's Signet Data Days. So we try and do events all the time to promote these tools. Even though Gary does Alteryx, I do Tableau, we try to marry them together. So any chance we can get to bring both of those groups of people together, which I'd say 80% of them are Alteryx and Tableau users, we do. So in this example, we brought some people from Alteryx and people from Tableau that gave presentations. We tried to make it almost like a mini conference. So we had classes that they could sign up for, and if it was relevant to them, they would take it. If it wasn't, then they could skip on that and maybe take one in Tableau. So this wanted to give some clarification or some background on what Signet Data Days is.
Oh yeah, and that was like where somebody could bounce back and forth. It was pretty well attended by our groups, and we do have some enthusiasm because the users actually get the idea of, something that used to take me 12 hours, I can do in 10 minutes. Okay, I get it. I want to come and learn more about something like that. So. And we have these quarterly meetings where we get together and we share best practices and use cases and some of the things that we've done and accomplished in various departments. So if we know something awesome somebody did, we might ask them to put together a 2 to 3 page PowerPoint and come to the meeting and present what they've done. We have an active Microsoft Teams site, and especially the Alteryx one where there's a lot of technical questions, but there is a Tableau one as well. We actually have users communicating back and forth, like, here's how I would fix that workflow, or even uploading a patch or something like that, a file that somebody could use. So there's a lot of this back and forth, and we also use it to socialize community events like the Alteryx user group in Cleveland. We have a team in Dallas, so we have a Dallas Fort Worth user group that we promote, and then the Tableau and Alteryx user groups, or Tableau groups in those markets as well. We have posted lab hours. We don't get a lot of attendance there, but we do have those kind of things available if people want to work with us one-on-one on some of their problems. And we also are big on promoting certification of Alteryx, both the core level and advanced level. The Tableau one, the company has not yet got over the hump of paying for the certifications, but we are implementing something called skill belts. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I can give a little intro now. I'll talk a little bit more in depth later. Tableau skill belt. Has anyone heard of that in this room? Besides Lee?
Lee has.
Has anyone actually implemented it? So what it is, it's a certification process that you do on site. So Tableau created, it's really a workbook that has, here's all these videos, challenges, and at the end of them, there's a test that you can take. So it'd be proctored by someone internal in your company, and then you would give them a badge. It's really a gamification that is a free alternative to the Tableau certification. So if that is something you're interested in, there's some YouTube videos out there, and there's also some classes here at the conference that talk on that. But from what we've seen, it's a pretty cool feature that we're gonna start to explore.
And Tableau created it. So it's like an internal Tableau thing that you just have to get somebody to send it to you. I think last year, right?
Yeah, I think it was about 2 years ago. Okay. It's not been super publicized yet, but I'm not quite sure why, because it is really cool. There's if you reach out to them, they'll put you in contact with the people who actually created it, and they'll help you internalize it.
So we've really kind of told you what we've done, but getting to the heart of things, you're really trying to work with people and change the way that they behave. It's winning their hearts and minds. So the idea is that I can train somebody to use software in maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, whatever, but it's much harder to get somebody to break 15 years worth of bad habits that they have, right? So the kind of challenges that you often run into are more like emotional resistance, those kind of things. And so we have different ways that we message to each of the different departments, or that we work with each of the departments in trying to appeal to them to use these tools and participate in our community. And as you would imagine, IT factor is very important in this, because we often have to have IT stand up some of the core systems that we need, the analytical community themselves, the people who are going to do the work, And then finally, the executives who are going to pay the bill when we go to them and we say we need a larger amount, those kind of things, right?
So the question that I came up with is why now, right? I think I've heard a lot of different talks on a COE program, and I think they talk a lot about here's how we got the tools in, and then they spend a lot of time talking about here's what we do with the COE. But a lot happens between those two, and I think that that's the real question we're trying to answer is, so why now? Why would you make that step from getting the tools to the COE? So we did a POC, and virtually we had unlimited licenses for Alteryx and Tableau. And after the stuff we've done internally in our department, we expected that line to figuratively be out the door of people asking for licenses, and it wasn't that case. So when we opened that up for people to come, we had some people trickle in that we knew would, but by and large, the adoption, it wasn't there. And then we had to think about it and say, well, why? Why are people not picking up on these tools? And I had put myself in their shoes and said, if I'm an analyst, why am I changing what I'm doing if it's already working? So I had to make it relevant to them. So if you see on the slide, it says tailor your message. That went a long way for us. So for an analyst, what does that mean? So I was an analyst. So for me, time. I would do the same thing I do my daily reports, my weekly, my monthly, and my quarterly, and then do them all over again. So at no point was I really being an analyst. I like to coin that term as a glorified report builder, and it's not fun for me, and it's not rewarding, it's not challenging. So we wanted to challenge that and tell them, hey, if you pick up tools like Alteryx, you can automate all of your standard reporting and start focusing on the fun stuff, the predictive stuff, the optimization. So what we were trying to do is really turn our analysts from report builders to analysts and problem solvers. Another way that helped teach people or influence them to pick up these tools is making it relevant to their careers. I mean, I don't think anyone here would be upset if you got paid more, right? So with these tools, I mean, that's allowing you to take that step to become a data scientist, or what we call a citizen data scientist. So that's someone that lives inside the business unit, but they can still do the predictive modeling, do the optimization that warrants those higher salaries. So learning these tools has helped people in our organization rise up that chain. And even if they didn't stay in our organization, if you go on Google and type in careers and analytics, I mean, you're gonna see stuff pop up for Tableau, you'll see stuff pop up for Alteryx. So whether they stay with us, which we want for the top talent, but if they don't, it's helping them along the way too. So make it relevant for them as an analyst. From an executive standpoint, that was a little harder because I'm obviously not an executive, nor do I sit in any leadership meetings, but I had to think about it. And what is the job of an executive? I mean, it's to change the mind of senior leadership to either get them to buy into what you're doing or change a course of action. And the best way to do that is storytelling. So for the people that were coming into meetings just showing crosstabs of data, I mean, it's harder to get senior leadership to really understand what was going on. So if you come in with a Tableau dashboard, as you guys know, I mean, you can answer questions on the fly. You can show stuff as a progression using the storyboard mode of here's why we're going to make these action items. And then quite frankly, I mean, it's cool. If your peers are coming in and bringing in PowerPoints and you're coming in bringing in a Tableau dashboard, I mean, it does make it put your head up a little bit higher, chest out a little bit farther out, just because of the fact that it's fun, it's cool. Gary alluded to some of the cost savings. I think a lot of people say, well, Alteryx is extremely expensive, and I mean, Tableau is too. But there are cost savings out there. There was one department that I was working with, and the individual, they were third-partying out their quarterly and monthly and annual packages that they send up to C-level executives about the state of their business. And it was from a company in Saudi Arabia. They needed to make a last-minute change, and they wouldn't do it because they're sleeping over there. So I actually sat with that analyst, and I saw, oh, it's just Tableau. So we actually built the entire thing out in 6 hours. So imagine the cost savings, why they're paying another company to do that, I have no idea. But the fact that they were, I mean, those are internal savings. So we can get rid of that third-party associate and go ahead and bring in and do that in-house. Mm-hmm. From an IT perspective, it's a little bit harder. It depends on your IT department. For us, it was all about consolidation of reporting. So in our current state or previous to this, it was all just Excel reports that are passed around in email. IT had no way to track what was going on. It was all about what email did you get, which one is the most current, and executives, they couldn't track down and say, why does this report not tie to this report? Once you implement Tableau Online, as you guys know, you now have version control. You now see who's looking at it, when they're looking at it, when was it last updated. So play off of those little wins for IT, and it'll help get them bought in the process. But from a C-level perspective, what we're trying to do is create what we call a ecosystem of data. So we live in a siloed world. So real estate had their analytics, marketing had their analytics, and it went on and on. But they didn't really communicate to each other. So if we want to stay atop of our competition, I mean, we have to know how does real estate impact marketing? How does marketing impact operations? In creating that whole ecosystem of data, that's what tools like Alteryx and Tableau are letting us do. Those disparate data sources that now can speak to each other and speak to each other quickly. So as great as that sounded, or at least sounded to me, they're still going to have roadblocks and detractors. So the biggest one that we hear all the time is ROI, and there is no magic answer from my perspective. If somebody in this room has one, I'd be please raise your hand. I'd be interested to hear what it is. But from our perspective, it's just, you just got to track your savings and track, and eventually something will filter up to the top. So from our vantage point, it was reports and projects that we didn't think were going to have those savings, but they did. One of them was a maintenance dashboard that said, hey, if showcase breaks in a store or carpet rips, do we replace it? Well, you would say yes, obviously, but that's not always the case. What if the store's closing? What if you're relocating? There's plenty of reasons why you wouldn't do that. And we had someone that tracked what her decision would be with that and without it. And it ended up being a very large sum of money. Other areas where we had savings was internal audit. If you guys have not explored your internal audit areas of your company, there are lots of savings to be had there. So if you guys want, you can reach out to us and we can put you in contact with our internal audit ambassador, but he has found a plethora of savings inside of internal audit. From the standpoint of people saying, hey, I'm fine just doing my current reporting, that's fine. Let them do their thing. Focus on people that are showing an interest in it. They're going to be the ember, if you will, for other people to take notice. People will see that they're getting these promotions, they're getting recognitions from executives, and people are going to feel left out. So they'll eventually migrate back. So if someone is not coming on board with these tools, that's fine. Let them do their thing. They'll eventually come around. One thing we had that just came recently is we had one of Alteryx's chief data and science officers on site, and he made a really good point. He said if there is a detractor that you're trying to bring up to speed and you can't afford to have them left behind, surround them with people that are using these tools. Just by being surrounded by people that are, it's going to naturally speed up your progression. Because if everyone you're around you is talking about it, unless you wear noise canceling headphones, I mean, you're going to hear people talking, so it's going to help you with the adoption. And lastly, this goes without saying, but use your leadership to your advantage. So anytime you're presenting to executives, just throw in little hints. Hey, this was only possible because of the Alteryx tool. This is only possible because of Tableau. Just keep beating it in their heads, and they'll eventually take notice.
So to give you an idea of a little bit more detail of what we actually did and what actually happened, we initially had a proof of concept with Alteryx to have unlimited licenses, a server environment, a 9-month kind of engagement. We have a Tableau instance. It's a Tableau online instance. IT is a little bit less concerned about that because they don't have to do anything to manage the Tableau online instance. But that 9-month proof of concept was a little bit rocky, I'll have to admit. The idea of going into IT and saying, we want to sort of replace your vision with the vision that we have on our own. And whether or not you have the resources, we will help. We just need you to do it. And initially involved heavy executive sponsorship and maybe a heavy executive twisting of arms kinds of things. But the idea is we had the executive leadership, we didn't have the IT support. And that first initial, if I were to sum up this first slide here on this IT relationship, would be conflict. But we got through it. It was something that we proved ourselves. It was, there were things like things that they would normally do for you as a service, like fill out architectural diagrams and these things like that, and they're leaving that to the business unit to fill out. Those kind of things are difficult, and yet we went ahead and jumped through those hoops. And they allowed us to define the success criteria for the proof of concept against other tools. We pretty much had a good idea of what we were going to use Alteryx and Tableau for, so we pretty well defined it that the other tools wouldn't be able to match up against the criteria that we had defined for success. And at the end of the day, we got approval to go live with this, but what really helped us was significant change in leadership within the IT organization. So now we have more of a partnership. Somebody came into our organization who had been there previously and tried to do something like this and got a whole bunch of resistance, of course. And when he came back to our organization, he was able to jump right in where we were and assist us and get us across the goal line to the final stage of getting to enterprise. And so that IT champion, I guess what I would say to you is, if you receive resistance, the best thing probably to do is to shop around within IT to see if you can find some support somewhere, some glimmer of hope somewhere. If you can't, then you might have to go somewhat the executive/conflict result. But we did have some of that initial conflict that we got over, and the partnership's good for us. And we also leveraged outside vendors. So one of the key issues that IT had was we don't have any experience setting up an Alteryx server, therefore we can't. That's going to be anyone's story if you've never had something, right? So we used outside resources like Technion and First Mile to do some of the stand-ups for us. So our lessons learned, if you're opposed by your IT department, sometimes it's okay to say that you have a different opinion and go forward and be prepared to have a little bit of conflict if needed, but it might be worth it. But you really probably should be searching for an IT champion for the cause, and then leverage outside resources if needed. For the analytical community, winning their hearts and minds. So when we started speaking to people who were typically SaaS or MicroStrategy users, we brought them this idea of what would it be like if you get your time back? Like, what if you didn't have to feel like the people in this picture or the cat? That's all tired here, right? If you were able to get time back and you didn't have to turn something in at the last minute, or and then never had a chance to review it, and then your boss finds the error because you had no time to do the data review yourself. What if you didn't have to spend your nights when you got home from work working on something till after midnight and those kind of things, or potentially working weekends? And so we were socializing the idea of the time savings that you would get from using these tools. The idea of data blending. So not only do you have all these different departments, but very often, again, they have systems that don't talk to each other very well, and they have to find this middleware, I guess you would call it, to get communication between multiple data sets. What if we could eliminate that problem for you and even potentially allow you to enrich your data with census data and demographic data and geographic data and those kind of things? So we socialize that as well amongst the teams. What if we talk about the whole idea of VLOOKUP errors especially, right? I'm sure anyone that's used Excel has had one time or another where you've had a VLOOKUP error and you really couldn't solve it, or something that was costly for you, maybe professionally, or you had to spend a lot of time trying to track something like that down. That there are potential when you're doing a lot of manual input and have a lot of manual processes to make an error. Something like Alteryx and the use of Tableau can help you eliminate those kind of things. And then finally, the idea of staying relevant in your career. So I would often ask our business users, how many of you in the room are a data scientist? And no hands would go up, or maybe one hand would go up. And then I'd say, well, how many of you want to be replaced by a data scientist? And then no hands went up, right? So the idea of using these tools that kind of lower the barrier entry into true data science is something that's valuable, and they can stay relevant in their careers and potentially have those big wins within their departments. And training, of course, you do have those issues where people say, well, I don't know how I'm going to use the software. Right, so we will leverage outside resources to come on site and do training. We happen to have one of them in the room today. He's on the picture there, Lee Feinberg, here in the second row up here. But he came in and did a data visualization training. What are some of the proper techniques of data visualization? We also work with the user base on different levels. Some of them want to build these things for themselves. Some of them want our help, and some of them would rather us build it for them. And actually build it for them and deploy it for them. And so however it works for them, we're willing to do that, but we do have a small team and small number of internal resources, but we do try. And when it comes down to is job satisfaction, right? The idea of I love my job again, it's going to allow me to go home on time, it's going to be a satisfier for me. So we do socialize that to the organization. Does it work? Well, it doesn't work for everyone, right? You do have some pockets of resistance. You have people who say, I like using the tools that I've used. Why can't I continue to use the MicroStrategy or the SaaS or whatever that I've had all this time? I don't want to give those kind of things up, but we do work well with the teams that get it right away. We want to try to foster that and pretty much focus most of our energy there rather than trying to convince those who would want to kind of like hold on to the ways they've always done things. And many times too, some of the more advanced users initially are resistant. Like if I already know how to code in Python or R, why would I learn something like this? Because it's just too easy. And some of that, it comes down to, well, yeah, but if I can do it, what you're doing in coding in 10 hours, you can do it in an hour or 30 minutes or something like that. It's a compelling message for them, and they eventually get there. I think they're smart. They'll get there. The executives, it really does come down to the money, the ROI. So we did have to come up with some ways to calculate an ROI case for this. So it really often does come down to that. Middle management is also a little bit of a challenge because many times they're the ones telling their employees, I want it the old way. So the employee says, I've come up with a new process. I'm going to create all of these great visualizations. And they say, I like my Excel spreadsheets. Or fine, you can do that, but as long as I can download the detailed data. And so it's really kind of fighting this like three-pronged approach, IT, and then the analytical community, and then sometimes middle management or executive management that you have to win their hearts and minds. And sometimes it's more of a challenge than the analytical community themselves because the analysts get right away the idea of I can go home on time or that kind of thing. The executives are like, well, I still get my report. I don't care. Maybe they're less concerned that their employees are stressed out. I'm not sure. But we are exploring change management options too to create some messaging to those middle tier teams.
So at the end, I guess their question is, has it paid off? I'm half joking at this slide because someone recently told me that it was a bad slide, and I'll explain why, or at least the visualization. But yes, I would say it has paid off. As you can see, we've had adoption grow over time. And that's great. But what you see on here is it shows that it's in isolated departments. And I think that's our own doing. We did a chargeback model, right? So what the chargeback model said is you can have these tools if your department pays and funds it for it. So we bought them as a corporation, but then the individual departments had to pay into that fund to get the license. So two things happened. One, people that said they were eventually going to use it got a license, but then they never got around to using it. So, I mean, they're just stalling, holding up these licenses, and they kept saying, but I'm going to use it. It's like, all right, you've had it for 9 months, you haven't even opened it, let's reallocate that. The second piece is you have people that could benefit from it, but their department can't fund it. So what I'll say to that is, yes, we saw growth in isolated departments. Going into next year, we lifted that chargeback model, so I think that we're poised for success going into next year. So we're going to be implementing a use it or lose it policy. So if you have the license, you're not running a certain amount of workflows, then we're going to pull that license and reallocate it to someone else. One of the ways that we plan on tracking Alteryx usage, if you guys haven't looked into phone home data, look into it. So there's when you download the script to download, well, actually, Gary, you want to explain it? You're probably better at it.
Yeah, there's an installation file that comes with the Alteryx platform that allows you to feed you information about what your users are doing. So it's the kind of the tools that they're using. So you can see, are people just doing simple data prep and blending, or are people actually using predictive analytics tools within their workflows? And something a little bit difficult because you have to modify the runtime settings.xml file, but it's something that can be done.
Sounds challenging. It just is a matter of going into that file and taking out two sentences and putting in two new ones. But what it does, as Gary said, it tells you how many workflows are run. So every time they hit run on the workflow, it's going to capture all the tools on the canvas and send it to our server so we can analyze that data. So why I was laughing about this slide and saying, is this a good metric? I actually had several people tell me that you guys are tracking view over time. Is that really a good barometer for Tableau of adoption? I thought yes, and I say it's a tool in the tool belt, but I don't think it's the best one. And he gave a good analogy. He said, if I'm an executive and you give me a great dashboard that shows sales, and my sales is within variance this week and next week and then next week, I'm eventually going to stop looking at that dashboard. Doesn't mean it's a bad dashboard. It just means that it's not relevant at that time. So what they recommended, and we're going to start rolling out, is using those alerts. So if you guys have not used alerts in Tableau, it's going to say, hey, once the threshold, it falls below a threshold, now it's going to send him an email and say, hey, take a look at this dashboard. So looking at view counts, yes, I think it's one way to look at it, but it may not be the whole story. So strategies for gaining success. So we're moving into next year. What can we do to keep that going? I think we've talked about a lot of them. So gamification, that skill belt I mentioned, we're going to use that to try and promote people to start doing training courses. Again, spend your time on people that are showing interest. I think that's really where you're going to hit your home runs, because they're going to be the catalyst to promote telling other people to start using the tools. Do internal events. So some that we're starting to roll out is a hackathon or an Iron Viz hackathon for Alteryx. So what we're going to do is we're bringing all people from the organization, or at least opening it up to them, having a problem that has been historically tough for people to solve, and putting people into teams. Even if you don't know how to use these tools, you can still have an impact on how we're doing these analyses. So just throwing out ideas, and at the end of it, we're going to have guest judges, which is, we're hopeful to have executives do that. So executives can now see, hey, what are we doing with these tools, so they can get some familiarity with it, but then also it lets the analysts get some visibility to executives and practice their presentation skills. So it's a win-win-win, and at the end of it, hopefully we'll have either a dashboard that comes out of it or a problem that is solved. Again, track usage, landing pages. So I think one of the problems that we ran into was we spent all of our time training analysts and training designers and how to use the tools. But what we missed the mark is we thought that once we created that dashboard, we're done. But that's not true. You need to train the viewers of the dashboard to how to work with Tableau online, how to interact with the data, what the functionality is there. I took for granted that I thought it was easy, but what may be easy for me is not easy for everybody. So don't underestimate doing training for your end users as well. And then the last thing that I'd say was super important was focus on the visualization principles. That's one thing that Lee came in and really helped out with. But if I was to do this over again, I would have started with that. I can teach them how to use the tools all day long, but I'm sure this will resonate with you. People are just going to create crosstabs. They're going to take their Excel reports and recreate it in Tableau. And then did that solve anything? Absolutely not. So I think if you start with the baseline of saying, here's why we're making visualizations, here's why we're using bars over lines, here's why we're using 2 colors as opposed to 10 colors, I think that'll be the staging to teach people why we're using these tools. It's all about the why. And lastly, think differently. So with these tools, you're not just bringing in a tool set, you're bringing in a culture. And I think you guys being at this conference can kind of take note of that. You want to grow the culture organically. What I always tell people is I don't want to teach you to use this tool. I want to teach you to teach yourself. Because if you're always coming to me to ask, how do I do this? You're missing the mark. I'm teaching you how to use a tool. I want to teach you to be part of the culture. I want to teach you to help other people, to teach you to be part of the group. I talked earlier about having siloed data. That's what I want to break down. I want to create a community, and that's part of what I think that these tools offer that their competitors don't. And with that, empower the analyst. One of the challenges and this came all the way up from our CEO, she said, I want you guys to create a career path for the analyst. I don't want the person with the most stripes on their shoulders to be the people talking in the meetings. And that, as an analyst, I mean, that's empowering, right? That's saying that, hey, what I'm doing matters, and it's encouraging me to not just be that glorified report builder, but also be someone that is finding efficiencies, and it's giving me confidence in what I'm doing. And lastly, hiring for success. I mean, what you want to find is people that have a curious mind. If you guys are not involved in your Alteryx and or Tableau user groups in your areas, I highly encourage you to do that. Some of the best candidates that we've hired at our company have come from those user groups, because those are the people that are showing initiative. Those are the people that are going out wanting to learn more about these tools, and the people that have curious minds. So, I mean, network as best you can. I know some people don't like networking. I don't myself, but it's something that it pays dividends down the road. So definitely encourage you guys to check out your local user groups.
So the big question is, how has it paid off? And I can tell you definitively that it has. There's been across-the-board savings in time, across all departments. And I'm not going to read every one of these use cases, but I want you to get a sense that many of these use cases come from various departments. They're not all within the same department. So you've got a lot of success in the operations department, or some of it was within our department. Some things we were able to get involved at an enterprise level to do enterprise analytics for the C-suite. That was asking questions, but really it's an across the board kind of win that we've seen for the company, and we've really tried to socialize it, and then we take these big wins and we use that to justify to the executives that we've been able to actually make what we said we were going to do happen. But again, you'll see that as you read these, they're really not all in the same department. It's across the organization.
So last, I want to show you guys some of the stuff that we've put together. I think it makes it relevant and takes it home. So we masked the data, so the data is not accurate, but these are a sales forecasting dashboard that we put together that shows what our sales were over time. But it's past looking, since Hellsberg here, thankfully, even if it was correct. But it is going backwards, so it just shows what our sales are, and you can slice and dice it. If they want to look at by one barometer or another, they can now quickly get to that. So it's really encompassing that self-service atmosphere. Another few dashboards, that repair and maintenance one that I talked to you guys about, if you see in the top right, and why I'm highlighting this, it has a trigger at the top. So I think this one says 3 trades in the same area. So what your dashboard should be showing is not just a number, it should be having an action item. In this one, it's saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this request because there's been 3 tickets in the same area, so maybe there's something else going on. Maybe they're not fixing the root of the cause. Maybe whoever's installing it isn't installing it correctly. So your dashboards, try to focus on having an action item, not just a number be the key point. Another one, this is just data consolidated on one spreadsheet. This used to be 30, 40 PDF files. So any chance you can bring them together on one dashboard, I think it consolidates it and makes it just easier for people to manage and see how the data points correspond to each other. Last but not least, we did a travel dashboard. In our current role prior to this, this was showing travel by department. So our travel, each department got their own PDF, but I mean, you can imagine how many departments we have. So asking one of our C-level executives to understand what's going on in the business, they can't unless they put them all on a wall and start looking at them like this. There was no roll-up, which yes, you could do a roll-up, but we asked IT to do that, and it ended up being a larger ask than they wanted to do. So being in the business unit, we got access to the data using these tools, and we put this together in just a few days. So I think it's challenging what the status quo is and stuff that used to be really an IT role, they can now do inside the business unit.
So some final key takeaways. I mean, and what we're telling you really is this is our story and we're in the midst of it, right? And I've freely admitted that we don't know everything. There are vendors that we need to bring on site to potentially help us and assist us along this journey. But we're willing to take that. We're passionate about it. We enjoy the ride that we're on. We're in the midst of it, and we're trying to make the most of it. Know that one person can make a difference. So like if you're currently a one-person team or maybe a small team within your organization, it's something that took me maybe 10 years to get off the ground. I showed you my first workflow from 2009. It took all that time to get something going, right? Know that change can be difficult, but be willing to persist. So again, if you encounter some of that conflict that you might have with business partners or IT partners in particular, that sometimes that fight's worth having because there are efficiencies to be gained and big wins in ROI cases to have. And finally, I've mentioned it several times, but be willing to look outside your organization and realize that you may not know everything about what you're trying to do, but potentially others can assist you because they've either been down that road before, maybe they've worked for the company, or leverage certainly Alteryx and Tableau's internal resources to help you along the journey as well. And they can often give you ideas of consultancies and teams that you can potentially work with as good partners.